Hi. Yeah, so hi everyone. Welcome to this event by Champaka with the author Jahnavi Barua. I'll just introduce her and then she'll join the live and then we'll start the conversation. Jahnavi Barua is a writer based in Bangalore. Her first book, Next Door, is a collection of short fiction and it was published in 2008 by Penguin India to wide critical acclaim. Her second is a novel called Rebirth. It was published in 2010 and shortlisted for the Man Asian Literary Prize and the Commonwealth Book Prize. Undertow was her third novel, published earlier this year. It follows the story of 25-year-old Loya, who sets off on a journey to Assam to meet her grandfather, who she has never met before. I'll just wait for Jahnavi to join the live. Hi, Jahnavi.
Hi, Nirika.
Yes,
Can you
I
hear
can
me?
hear you. Yes.
Oh, wow. Great. Great. So sorry for this
No
initial.
worries. It happens
Thank
all
you.
the time. It's fine.
It gets tense, and I'm so sorry to keep everyone waiting. Thank you so much. Thanks, Champaka Book, and thanks to everybody else who's joined today and who's waited so patiently.
So I've already introduced you, and I'm so glad that we can have this event with you because we planned to have an event in person all the way back in March. So it's quite
Right.
exciting to do this now.
I know we've kind of closed the loop, right?
Yeah, that's quite exciting. Yeah, so then I just have a few questions because I really enjoyed reading your book and I thought we could have
Thank
a
you.
little conversation about it. So the first thing that I wanted to ask is that a strong feature of the book, and I've read interviews that you've talked about this as well, is the strong sense of place, which recurs through your writing. And there's also an exploration of a lot of other themes that are as strong. So, of the idea of home, of family and relationships, of insider and outsider. So, could you talk a little bit about that and how that comes out in your writing?
Sure. Yes, it's Undertow is very strongly rooted in place, as is actually a lot of my other work. A lot of my fiction has a strong sense of place. For me, place is more than a setting. It's almost a character. It's almost one of the strongest elements in my writing. And I'll tell you why. I believe, it's just my belief that place has a very strong influence on people. Sometimes you don't realize it. It's sometimes a very unconscious, subconscious thing, but it impacts you in many, many ways. Some very trivial and some very deep ways. I'll give you a small example, a very simple example. You take a trip to Goa. Within 2 days, you find you're shifting gears, right? You're relaxing. You've thrown the watch away. Time doesn't mean much anymore. And if you stayed on longer, what if you stayed on in Goa? It's not just a temporary change. It becomes part of your daily routine. You shift gears, you relax. And the reverse happens when we come into a big city. You come into a Mumbai and you find you're looking at the clock, you're looking at the watch, and you become a different sort of person. So this is a very simple, simplistic kind of example, but place impacts a person in very many ways. Some deep, some simple. To me, that matters a lot. And in Undertow, especially, if anyone's read it, the river, the Brahmaputra, becomes almost a living, breathing creature. It's more than setting. I think he becomes a character in the book. But as you said, place is not all. There are many other things I explore in Undertow. Some aspects of life which have been very important to me, which interest me a great deal. For example, home. There's so much talk about home these days, right? During lockdown, there were people trying to get home. There were people missing home. There were children stuck halfway across the world, couldn't come home. So what is home? Growing up, because I had a very shifting nomadic life. My father was in the civil services and I had to move around a lot. So to me, home meant changing homes every so often. So I kind of took a good hard look at it. And in Undertow, I explored at many levels. The very simple level of the physical home, the structure of home, the house, as we say. All of us have such deep emotion invested in our homes, right? My father's home, the house I grew up in, my grandfather's home. So similarly, for Loya, the young woman who's the protagonist in this particular in Undertow, she's been looking for that home all her life, and unfortunately, she felt very alien in her, she felt very alien in her grandfather's home, where, in her paternal grandparents' home. She was very uncomfortable in the flat she lives in with her mother, and she was hoping that the home she's looking for in Assam will give her that elusive home that she's looking for. Uh, Also, explore home at a very different level, as in the place one comes from, as in the region you belong to, which is actually a big issue these days. India is such a diverse country, and every place is so different that these differences throw up a wall between us sometimes. And this brings up the issues of insider, outsider, who belongs where, do you belong here, do you have the right to belong here? Migrants, we saw the migrants trying to go home. And to me, it was odd to call our own citizens migrants within the country. A migrant from Rajasthan to here, a migrant from Kerala to Assam. It's a slightly odd note. But these issues do come up because of differences in place. And eventually, the last aspect of home that I explored, which matters, is just a second, Nilika. I'll just take a quick 2-second pause to,
Sure.
yeah. All the other interruptions. Yeah, so the final aspect of home that I explored, which matters the greatest deal to me, I think, which is what should matter to us, is our own position in the world. It's that place in the wider world where we feel comfortable, where our ideas are accepted, where we are accepted for who we are. What is that home? That's a kind of a virtual home which we are all seeking to be in, to achieve one day, right? And to get to that home, we need to know ourselves very well. We need to have a very deep understanding and insight of who we are. What do we stand for? Where do we belong? How do we connect with our communities, with our legacy, with our history, with books, with films, with the environment? What do you stand for? That home. So while Loya actually physically makes a journey from Bangalore to Assam to her grandfather's house, along the way she sees herself in a much clearer light. She sees herself in a sharper focus than she has ever seen before. And to her, in a way, that was arriving at home. So this is the various levels that I explored home, the idea of home in the book. The next thing I looked at was identity, and again something very closely connected to home. Identity not as in caste, creed, community, which of course does play a role in our lives, especially in our country, and which has played a role in the story. Caste, creed was what led to Zoya's mother being thrown out of home in the first place. But to me, identity is again a slightly more nebulous thing. It's again who you are, what you stand for, what are your beliefs. In a sense, connected, very closely connected to the idea of where your personal home is. So identity is another thing which is explored strongly in this book. And I think last but not least is relationships. As a writer, and I think most writers would agree, we are fascinated by relationships. I, for one, am fascinated by people, but how, what they are and how they interact with other people, what they display to the world and what they do not display, what you reveal and what you don't, and how you interact with people, how you bond with people, and how sometimes those ties unravel. And what happens when those ties unravel is sometimes more interesting than what happens when you come together, right? And in Undertow, what I did was take the small arena of family, relationships largely within a family. Now, again, I feel that family is the perfect kind of small stage for the world. Family is where we train to go out into the wider world, and we learn almost everything, if you look at it objectively, about love, about hate, about trust, distrust, loyalty, treachery, ambition, hard work. We learn practically everything at home, which launches us into the wider world. And we grow up into adults and we say, I'm my own person, but yes, we definitely are, but we do carry a lot of our learnings from home experientially into the wider world. So I found it fascinating how what plays out in a family also plays out in a larger world. So Undertow is also about familial relationships, about love, about marriage, about friendships, and all those other relationships. Yes.
So actually following from that, I did really like how the book was focused on relationships. But another thing that I was interested in is that it's focused on personal interactions, but it's also political. So how did you draw that balance between the personal and the political in Undertow?
This is a question which comes up again and again in my writing, in that, are you writing, why, in fact, I'm asked, why don't you write more about politics? So what happens is, for me at least, I write about real life and I write about politics as much as it impacts on real life. I'll give an example. For example, Undertow. This is 2009 and Loya is about 25. So when you go back 25 years, Rukmini's story, her mother, she was born 25 years ago. So Rukmini's story is centered around 82, 83. At that time in Assam, there was this statewide students movement. For those who remember and for those who don't, Assam had this students movement led by the All Assam Students Union, the ASU, which was fighting against illegal migrants, not just staying in Assam, but being allowed to vote, being on voters' lists. So the whole state was gripped by this movement. There was Rukmini's story happened to happen on this background. So obviously that was a stage for it. I didn't deliberately put it there. It just, the timelines called for it. But the interesting thing was that what was being played in the background on the larger stage of the Assam movement, the issues and the conflicts were very similar to what was being played out in Rukmini's personal life. The issues of who's an insider, why are you marrying an outsider, issues of identity, issues of acceptance, issues of love, issues of rejecting somebody. In a smaller stage, it was being played out in her life. The turbulence was being created in her life. So that contrast was there, but it just happened very organically. I didn't seek to put it there. In my other writing, again, Erica, I try to portray real life wherever I am, and politics as much as it really needs to come into real life. I think that's the kind of stand I've taken on this.
That's interesting. I also was struck by your writing style, which I found quite minimal and restrained, which I really liked. But how did you come by that? Is that like the way you generally write? Is that your most comfortable way of writing?
That's actually a very easy answer. I think for all of us writers, our writing is an extension of what we are, right? So for me, I tend to like things which are very simple and unadorned and not too fussy. So it was, I think, a natural progression that I write the same way. And yeah, I've stuck to that. And I think there's great beauty in very simple things. And I know it's a cliche, but less is really more. And you can actually say a whole lot with just a few words. And I'm happy with that. I do that, yes.
Would you be able to read out a bit of Undertow to us?
Sure, I'll read out a very short passage because, again, I feel that books just should be read, not read out, but I'll read out. So just to give you a background, I'm reading the opening scene, the very first chapter and the opening scene of Undertow. Just bear with me, just a couple of pages. As if things were not bad enough, the morning of a wedding, the All Assam Students Union declared a bandh. Two young men, their heads split open in a police lathi charge the day before, had died in the intensive care unit of Guwahati Medical College soon after midnight. Rukmini had known as soon as the boys had died. One of her classmates on duty in the ICU had called her. When the phone rang, shattering the silence of the house, she had snatched it up on the first ring. She listened to the words tumbling down the line and knew straight away there would be trouble in the morning. In her mosquito-netted cage, Rukmini lay awake through the long night. She would not have slept anyway, but this business with the boys had sealed any hope of sleep coming to her rescue. She lay curled up on her left, the quilt pulled up to her face. Its velvet cover was soft against her skin as it rose and fell with her breath. Despite the December cold, the wide windows looking out west across the river were open, and through the fretwork of the mosquito mesh, she could see the night sky, dark and silent, the stars glittering cold fire. There was something enchanted about the sky on a clear night like this. Rukmini could not help but feel its magnetic pull, as if people and events from afar, but below this same sky, were calling out to her to leave her safe harbor and sail into unknown, alluring waters towards them. Beneath the sky, she could also see the river, the reflection of the few street lamps along its bank, the occasional flicker of a lamp on a country boat. These made the river visible to her in the deep of the night. This river had run through her life, the Brahmaputra, swept round the bottom of a hill. Even in the dark, especially in the darkness, she sensed the waters racing past her towards the distant flatlands of Bangladesh, and beyond that to the Bay of Bengal. Black river, dark velvet sky, and where they met, dark blue hills invisible in the night. Rukmini lay awake, hungry and exhausted. She had not eaten dinner nor lunch. No one in the house had eaten. Her mother Usha had taken to her bed early in the afternoon. She had refused water or food since. Torun, her father, had shuffled from his bedroom to the drawing room. Rukmini heard him moving back and forth, pausing outside her locked door. Roman had shut down the kitchen. There would be no feasting. There would be fasting instead on the occasion of the marriage of the daughter of the house. When Arun, her older brother, and Solala had ventured into the cold kitchen to ask for food, Roman had evicted him, yelling angrily. How is it my fault? Arun had asked. It's everyone's fault, Roman had shouted back. The muscles at the nape of Rukmini's neck knotted at Raman's remark. It was all her fault in the end. Then a flare of anger. Was it anyone's fault? Was falling in love a fault? To the wrong man it certainly was, she could hear her mother say. A man who was not of a religion, let alone her caste, nor of a race, nor from any region remotely near hers, and a man whose skin was dark, to make matters worse.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I kind of read this scene this morning, and I was thinking of how when I wrote this book, when I was writing this book over the last 10 years, I hadn't realized these matters would become so urgent, so topical as they are today. Migration, insider, outsider, the color of skin, and there's such burning issues today, right? Such burning questions in front of us. So this is, it was like very uncanny. My hair stood up like on my arms, seeing something I'd written about 10 years ago, sort of happening out, playing out in front of us today. Yes.
So Undertow is available at Champaka. And we do also have Jahnavi's earlier books Next Door and Rebirth. So if you'd like to pick them up, you can. Jahnavi, just wanted to know what you're reading now.
I'm reading Jayant Kaikini, No Presents Please, a collection of short stories. It's a lovely book, and I always have one book of short stories on my table always. And I'm rereading Disgrace, Coetzee's Disgrace, and I do that once in a while. I enjoy it tremendously. It gets the creative writing juices flowing.
That's lovely. If anyone has any questions, you can send them in. I think lots of people have really enjoyed your reading.
True, I can't see any questions right now. Did you come across anything? Did you come across in the beginning? No, not yet.
Not yet. Well, if no one has any questions, thank you all for joining, and thank you so much, Jahnavi, for being a part of this. Hopefully one day we'll be able to do it in person.
Yes, I hope that day comes where we can all be in. There seems to be one question now. 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years. 10 years. Yes, because I didn't work at it for long stretches. There were some periods of ill health, and secondly, because I tried very hard. Technically in this novel to balance the two protagonists. I was trying to give both protagonists an equal saying and a chance to have their say equally, and that took some balancing. It's very easy for a writer to pick one protagonist and write from that point of view. But I found when I was trying to place both, it took some balancing. That took a long time to write. My favorite poets. I don't read that much poetry. I don't read that much poetry, but yes, Philip Larkin. I love Agha Shahid Ali. I love a lot of our older Indian poets. Yeah, another question. Favorite short story collection? That's a good question and a very long one. I love short fiction, one of my favorites, and I would suggest a lot of our Indian writers in English in translation. Raymond Carver for his minimalism, Alice Munro for the way she brings a universe into a short story, Richard Ford for the way he writes objectively but with so much muscle. Yeah, so many collections. The difference between short story writing and novel writing is like, it's two different worlds, it's two different stages. And I would say the harder of the two is a short story. It's very precise. You have very little room in word count, in snatch of time, in reader's attention to to grab the reader. So it's a very precise form. It's like almost like a miniature painting. You don't have much room for error, whereas in a novel, you actually have a bit of scope for error. You can actually meander and, sort of laze about a bit. So I think, yes, short story is very precise. A novel is strenuous, but not as precise as a short story. So many words in the novel that you don't come across. How do you develop a palette, a vocabulary? I think just by reading and more reading. There's no other way. And when you find a beautiful word, grab it, make it your own, and maybe extend it. Go to synonyms, go to antonyms, see what it means, and grab the whole list. My favorite Assamese writers, I would have to say, we have Assamese writing in Assamese writing in English. There's a whole bunch of Indian English writers. In Assamese, Mamuni Baido, Mamuni Raisam Goswami definitely would be my favorite. In Indian writing in English, a whole host. There's Rubha Hazarika, there's Mamang Dai, there's Mitra Phukan. What would a small book club would love to read this book, Nes? I hope you do. I would be happy if you read the book at the book club, yes.
So, yeah, I think we'll end here. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jahnavi. I hope to meet you in person soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Champaka. Thank Radhika too. And thank you all the listeners and for being patient with the initial technical hitch. Did you have fair undertone down? Last question, Jaisal. Yes, I did. I brought it down from an almost 80,000 word count to 50,000. I kind of pared it down almost 1/3. Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you so much all for being here.
Thank you. Undertow is available at Champaka, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Good luck, everybody. Bye.